Welcome to the Superhero Sidekick Leadership Coaching Podcast with Joel Smith and Joe Baker. We're here to help you develop your superpowers. This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Smith.
I'm Joe Baker. We're not here to be the superhero. We just want to be your sidekick and help you along in building your business, building your not-for-profit. Let's help you grow it fast and really scale.
Be sure to check us out on Facebook and visit us at superherosidekick.com.
All right, here we are at the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. We've got Matt Hammitt again in the studio. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the creative process again. And in particularly, there's this thing that happens to a lot of entrepreneurs and to a lot of creative people where at the beginning they're very creative and they kind of come out of this very difficult scenarios, often scenarios of like poverty or struggle. And those create all this beautiful music and business concepts, but then their life gets comfortable. And when it gets comfortable, they actually begin to have a really hard time finding those creative places in their heart and finding that vision again, in both, writing and also in entrepreneurship. And so I know Matt has been poor. He knows what it's like to be poor, kind of like Paul says. Paul says, I know what it's like to be poor and I know what it's like to be rich. And I've experienced this too. Joel's experienced this too. Most super wealthy billionaires have experienced what it's like to be poor. And so, share a little bit about that for you, what it was like when you were like in that creative process when you started out, how it shifted and what kind of things you had to do to stay creative.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my creativity, honestly, was really based on the struggle, like you said. I mean, first, you start out like 16 and you're young and it's all new and it's all fresh. And you're like, there's that excitement of creating things for the first time. And then you move into the struggle of grinding it out and so much inspiration. And I would agree wholeheartedly that sometimes after you get in the flow and you're like, okay, the machine's going, it's being funded. Now we're like just doing life as normal, I guess. It is hard to figure out, okay, well, how do I reconnect with that piece of myself that kind of birthed all of this creativity? And oftentimes we don't want to go through adversity in our lives, but we find that when we go through adversity, it becomes the greatest catalyst of purpose in our lives. It's another great mystery of like,
yeah,
why do hard things happen to us? Why do we feel pain? Why is there evil or suffering in the world? All these like big questions that people ask. It's like, well, I don't have all the answers to that, but I do know for sure that those are the things in my life that have stirred the greatest creativity, that have actually most impacted others in the world. And so I've kind of learned to embrace and accept that each season of life, when I think adversity is done, I know there's more coming. And I've learned to kind of embrace it because I know that out of that, if I allow myself as a creative person to receive it and process it in a way that first, is good, it helps my soul, then it will go on to help others. And so I think that embracing just the gnarly pieces of life, man, the hard stuff is so huge, because in those normal seasons, as much as we should breathe and enjoy it, it can be hard to connect with that piece of yourself that is being creative. And at the same time, there's also truth and discipline as well. Like we talk about writer's block, in the music world. And I don't think there's really any such thing as writer's block. There's such thing as like, hey, I'm not naturally inspired in the way that I maybe once felt inspired. That's true. But it's that discipline of being able to sit down and force yourself to, or choose to, I'm going to write, I'm going to journal, I'm going to sing, I'm going to like push through and make this happen. It's like run a marathon. Like you could say, well, I just have runner's block today because I feel tired and I don't want to go run. It's like, no, you get up, you put on your running shoes and you run, you condition yourself to be able to keep moving. And it's the same with the creative process. You'll go through seasons where naturally you aren't as inspired, but the discipline to put on your shoes and keep running is something that you choose every single day. And so I think that's vitally important in those seasons that feel less inspired.
Yeah, and then I think the other aspect too, and I think about it too, is that like when you start out and you have a lot of time when you start out. Time is a commodity that is, you have time and you have space to be creative. And then when you get a few Dove Award winning songs, then suddenly everybody wants to talk to you and everybody wants to, hear you, and there's all this attention that you get. And suddenly there isn't that commodity of that time anymore where it's like you have unlimited space. Now you actually have to get tremendous discipline, which is very costly now to you to take up that time. What do you say about that aspect of it as well?
Yeah, I would agree 100% that it was like before you could kind of wait for the wind to blow and like wait for the idea to hit you. And now it's like you don't have a choice. You have a deadline, right? And so that can be very stressful. I was with a writer, a couple weeks ago who was trying to catch more inspiration, and he was finishing up a book and it was kind of done and he was kind of meeting his deadline, but there were still things he wasn't happy with and trying to flush it out, a little more. And I would just say that I just go back to the thing that just the discipline of it is so hard, but keep on moving, keep on being creative, keep on sitting down with the pen and paper, keep on dreaming, keep on whiteboarding, don't stop. But then I say also in a previous segment that you need that time to rest. There's a season to rest as well. So I don't know, Joe, I think I'm figuring it out, man. I'm realizing right now that I'm still figuring this whole thing out. I'm like trying to answer the question. I'm like, I don't think I have the balance of rest and discipline properly down in my life. And I don't know if I ever will.
Yeah.
I don't know if balance is like a real thing even.
Well, there are different tools that you can use, like that I use on my clients. Like, for instance, for me, like I try to get on a treadmill every day. Right now, I'm trying to get to 16 and 17,000 steps a day, which is so intense on my ankle that it's like leaving me throbbing. And next day, I have to get up with crutches. But for me, the commitment I make is to stand on the treadmill and run it for 5 minutes. I just have to do it for 5 minutes. And it's like that's the commitment I make. And so it's like, what happens is when you commit to something like that, it's like you kind of lead the horse to water, and then it's like, oh, okay, this is going good. I can flip the TV on and I can stay on this thing for a show, at night, and that's kind of my way of kind of doing that. In the same way, it's like for a writer that's really struggling, it's like, no, you need to make that commitment every day to sit down and write one sentence or one paragraph. And it's like, you don't want to commit to write the whole song. You don't want to commit to write for hours, or else you actually won't do it. But if you commit to something small and then you create a big consequence in your life, if you don't do that small thing, you'll end up constantly kind of getting the horse to water, and then the inspiration often comes, and sometimes it doesn't. But either way, you build that habit. Yep, that can make you really strong.
That's good, man. Very good.
Do you do anything like that you think about?
At this season in life, man, I'm just with writing, I've got so many different creative processes, like more about me figuring out what I need to be doing on any given day. So I don't have one discipline I do every single day, but except for the discipline of looking at where I need to be creative and making myself sit down. So that could be, typing. Actually, pretty soon the discipline is going to be making myself write content for the app that we're working on. That's this next few weeks of discipline for me. So I think that's good, man. I think the lead a horse to water is so simple, but it's really good because you're right. It's like you start small and you build that endurance, especially for newly creative people I have a lot of people ask me like, well, how do you end up writing a whole song on your own without being in a co-write? I'm like, man, it has been years of like just making myself sit down and write. And so there's a lot to the discipline.
The other thing is hard for me too. Like I try to do like an hour of creative a day as well. But sometimes that that hour of creative, it starts out with the 5 minutes, and then I end up like on like YouTube, or I end up like kind of dorking around, and my wife sees me, because I work from home, and she looks in, she sees me not doing anything. She's like, "Hey, how about you go watch the kids for the next hour?"
Yeah.
And because you're not doing anything, And
Yeah.
that's a whole nother level of it too, is having our spouses understand the space that we need, and that sometimes we tinker around and it looks like we're not doing anything, but really that's important time that, you can't just like, substitute that and say, I'll go put the kids down, or I'll do this or that. I mean, sometimes you need to do that, but your spouse needs to understand that kind of the goofy side of the creative process as well, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And that takes time for sure.
Well, I think there's been a lot of good tips from you, Matt, between this show and the last one, and so I'm excited to hear from our listeners on what they thought. Maybe we got some songwriters out there. I don't know. What do you think, Joel?
Yeah, it'd be good to hear. I'd love to hear what people have to say. Other creative people out there, maybe the struggles that they have. Please give us some feedback. Leave some comments.
Yeah. One last thing I'd say too to songwriters is like, keep reconnecting with the guts of your story, man. That's like, I mean, when I get into a session, the most special songs that I help people write, I would say my greatest gift is revisiting the guts of people's story, what really makes them who they are. And I think staying connected to your roots and those pieces of your story that still manifest themselves in your everyday life, and some of that's healthy and some of it's unhealthy. And you look into both, and digging into those vulnerable spaces or revisiting those vulnerable spaces also is a really important tool to be able to reconnect with who you are and what unique gift you bring to the world, by the both good and bad or the pain and the victories that you've had. And so keep revisiting those places. Don't forget what made you who you are.
Wow. That's
Great
good.
advice.
It's good. And yeah, it's so good. And, as we close out here, you're so it's so inspirational just to think about your life and really your creative process that makes me want to go out and write a song. So we'll see.
Hey man. Well, I'm working on a song for you. So you'll help me out with it. You'll help me out with it sooner than later.
Can't wait. All right. So once again, this is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. Check us out on Facebook, like us, and also follow us and share your email. You can listen to Matt Hammitt's and find Matt Hammitt on Spotify and everywhere else you'd ever want to find a song. Anywhere else, Matt, that I'm forgetting?
Man, nope. So matthammitt.com, yeah, socials and Spotify, wherever. You can find me. Google me, you'll find me, I promise.
It's awesome.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you all later. See you on the next episode.